This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Get into the early life of Madame St. Clair. What do you got, Beth?
Stephanie St. Clair's date and location of birth are not clear. She was born around 1890 in French Guadeloupe, formerly the French West Indies. Some sources say she was born in Martinique. Others say France. Either way, she was born at a time when Black people and women were not formally educated or well off economically, and she was one of 4 children.
The historical dispute over her early life and conflicting accounts are either due to lack of diligence on the part of journalists at the time, or for whatever reason, intentional misleading by St. Clair herself during later interviews. And I one source said she was doing interviews from her jail cell at one point.
Oh, wow.
It dressed up all fancy and stuff. So maybe she thought it was more glamorous to have been born in France. After all, this was during the Harlem Renaissance, and flash and glamour were admired.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
There is surviving documentation of her travels and a marriage, but that documentation also contains conflicting information. Most of what we know about Madame St. Clair is information that she provided.
And I love that aspect of her existence.
Yeah.
Like, I'm only going to she's like a Beyonce. Oh my God, this revelation has changed my life. She's like a Beyonce. There's one interview of Beyonce where she's basically interviewing herself and answering her own questions. And it's one of the
That's
best,
hilarious.
one of my favorite Beyonce interviews. It's like that. So on July 22nd, 1911, she is in the ship's manifest as having boarded the SS Guiana from Guadeloupe and arrived in New York 9 days later. From there, she traveled to Terrebonne, Quebec, a suburb of Montreal. The ship's manifest listed her as a servant.
She was married in 1915 to George Gachet, an immigrant from Dominica who petitioned for naturalization in 1928. He was an elevator operator or engineer, as well as a social activist who worked in New York and legally married St. Clair at Benedict the Moor Catholic Church in New York on January 6, 1915.
One biographer says she was born December 24th, 1897. Other biographies give her birthplace as Martinique and some as France. St. Clair herself insisted her birthplace was in France. Her birth year is sometimes listed as 1897. With so many things unknown or unclear about her, what is known for sure is that she was able to read and write in both French, English, and she spoke Spanish as well. She was fashionable, intelligent, and educated. A woman in total control of herself. She was a drag queen. And for you white listeners, OLB, Original Lady Boss, which is a new one for me, but I'll take it. Now, let's get into the timeline. Hit it, Bev.
Sometime in the early to mid 1920s, St. Clair separated from George. It's unclear why or exactly when. Around this time, according to one biography of her, she also became a leader of a local gang, the 40 Thieves, that ran extortion and theft schemes. But we couldn't really find confirmation of this.
St. Clair was successful at the time in a lawsuit against a former landlord who illegally evicted her from her apartment. She got $1,000 compensation, which in today's dollars is about $15,000.
Wow.
And yeah, wow, indeed.
Yeah.
She used that compensation as part of the capital needed to venture into the numbers game.
Whether it was by these means or by running her own crime gang called the 40 Thieves that ran extortion and theft rackets, somehow she accumulated a large nest egg. And St. Clair then invested $10,000, about $174,000 in today's money, to develop her own numbers game in 1923, becoming what was then called a policy banker.
I love this.
Yeah.
She's my hero. So in Playing the Numbers, Gambling in Harlem Between the Wars, authors Shane White, Stephen Garton, Stephen Robertson, and Graham White argue that the numbers game was, quote, the black business, end quote, of the early 20th century. Cosmopolitan Black communities across the country, from Chicago's South Side to Harlem, played numbers in different ways. The game was massively popular all across northern cities.
This was at a time when Black Americans were often denied bank loans, were even denied access to banks at all, and they were skeptical of white-controlled banks. I wonder why.
Gee!
According to Stephen Robertson, the illegal numbers game or policy was, quote, akin to putting money in the stock market. Many saw it as an investment, and it was often just as risky as putting money in the stock market back then, unquote.
Throughout Harlem, Stephanie St. Clair was referred to as Madame St. Clair, the Grande Dame. She was on the level of Madame C.J. Walker, who was America's first Black female millionaire. And she made her money off of selling hair products to Black women. And in the rest of Manhattan and other city boroughs, she was referred to as Queenie. This is Stephanie St. Clair.
Yeah. St. Clair was outspoken, taking out full-page ads in local newspapers, expressing her thoughts and views. Wow.
Yeah. And I also
hear me.
She also had a potty mouth, which I love.
She spared no expense in advocating in the press for immigrant rights, explaining voting rights to her community, and speaking against police brutality.
By the way, in Black pop culture, you can see sort of examples of Queenie in The Wiz, which is AKA the Black version / better version of The Wizard of Oz. And that's an example of Queenie St. Clair. And Madame St. Clair was also portrayed by Cicely Tyson in the movie Hoodlum. And finally, they must have been listening to us because there are grumblings of an HBO project that is in the works, out of the works. Anyway, somebody seems to be working on something at HBO about this woman. So,
yeah. Madame St. Clair was the high priestess of petty.
Hello.
One of the ads that she took out in the paper was addressed to potential suitors and directed them to, quote, please not annoy me. I, Madame St. Clair, am not looking for a husband or a sweetheart. If you do not stop annoying me, I shall publish your names and letters in the newspaper. Unquote.
I love it. I love a good drag and a fuck you in the news. Oh my God. How did she do that? Madame St. Clair, will you adopt me? So Madame St. Clair clearly, or Clairly, LOL, had no time for anyone's nonsense. Not today, Satan. And although she expressed no interest in partnering romantically with men, she did make use of male protection for her business.
There was actually another entrepreneurial Black woman running a numbers game from her home at the same time, Alberta Green. She was described as being in her 40s at the time and was known as the policy queen of South Jamaica.
Okay. Now, unlike St. Clair, though, Green was actually running her business by herself without the help of any male protection, no soldiers, no police payoffs, no organization.
Yeah.
And instead, she turned her home into an armed fortress, guarded by numerous bolts and locks on each door and by 2 ferocious police dogs in the rear.
That sounds scary.
It does. It does. It sounds like she built her own prison too.
Yeah,
to
it
be
doesn't
honest.
sound healthy or fun. Yeah.
It's what's that white guy who invented planes who started peeing in jars?
Oh yeah. Yeah, what's his face? Good old what's his face?
I don't know. Leonardo DiCaprio played him in a movie,
Yes,
but
in
that's
the
that guy.
Aviator. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
it
can't remember
kinda
his
reminds me of.
name, but yeah, it sounds miserable.
Yeah.
Yep. Ultimately, that led her business to fail as she was turned in by informants and her home in Jamaica, Queens was raided by police. She was arrested in 1935 during a crackdown on vice led by religious and community leaders.
These kinds of businesses were sometimes the only ventures that women, and especially Black women, could go into at the time. Any type of formal business or career track was generally male-dominated.
Acceptable career paths for men like factory work, office work, management, business ownership, political positions, etc., were deemed unacceptable for women at the time. Some might argue to this day as well.
Well, all voting in favor of the truth. So any woman attempting to go through traditional routes to pursue these kinds of jobs would have been blocked from doing so. So if a woman wanted to support herself through any means other than domestic servitude or becoming a wife or a mother, get that MRS degree, y'all. There were very few options.
Some of these options at the time were sex work, spiritualism, which were tarot readings, palm readings, contacting the dead, stuff like
Call
that.
me for your free reading, Miss
Yes.
Cleo.
Miss Cleo,
Your
yes.
free reading now. Yeah, man. Did you know her accent? She's fake. Her accent is fake. I mean, aside the back from
I
that
believe it, yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't a real psychic, and she wasn't a real Caribbean woman. Okay, I said it.
She's trying to,
She's hustling. She's trying to earn that money.
survive.
And
Yeah.
I can't be mad at that.
Yeah. Or running numbers games, all of which were referred to as informal work.
That's insulting. How dare you?
That's very
How dare you?
Fuck you.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Why am I laughing?
I don't know, because we would be sobbing if we couldn't laugh.
True.
Because it's just the way of the world. And we have to work to change it for the next generation. Right?
Yeah. One would hope.
Yes.
Oh, man, it's election day.
It's going to be should we stop for a breathing exercise or a meditation exercise? Okay.
All right. Women also worked as employees at numbers banks. During her teenage years, singer Ella Fitzgerald actually worked as a Harlem numbers runner.
Oh my God, I've been working on, I love this because I've been working on my Ella Fitzgerald scatting. Skibba-dabba-dab-dab-dabba-dee. Anyway, I love that. Anyway, turns out even the informal work was male dominated. Shocking. St. Clair got through it by payoffs and by partnering with male bosses, quote unquote. They like to be called that, for protection. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, male domination of the numbers game extended to players as well. While perfectly acceptable for male of any race to gamble, whether legally or illegally, Black women who indulged in this were often considered addicts. Oh my God. Who were sacrificing their family's financial and spiritual well-being in favor of this menace to women's virtue and womanhood. Oh Lord. Oh no. Child, Father God, please cast out these money laundering, gambling demons out of these women, Lord. Yes, Lord, amen.
Publications of the time indicated that Black women gamblers had no mental compass and preferred gambling over, quote, saving money for rent and food, unquote. They don't say that about the men, though, do they?
No, they do not.
Nope.
No, they don't.
Nope. Both female gamblers and females who ran gambling business were looked down upon unless they had the proper male support to do so.
Of course.
Right.
Because it is true that women are often seen as merely vessels to procreate.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not important.
Yeah, so anything else, unacceptable.
Right.
Despite the patriarchy, Black women involved in this informal work, as they say, were able to pay medical bills, school tuition, and get their hair done and gain some kind of independence. All good things.
Yeah. St. Clair developed the first numbers bank located in Harlem. Here, she and her partners, which included Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, made the first significant criminal fortunes in Black New York.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place. For changes big and small. Loud or quiet. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This December, Christmas gets creepy with the Empty Coffin Podcast. This is host Greg Hansberry, and we are unwrapping the dark side of the holidays. This month, we revisit the haunting tragedy of a rock legend's final performance.
The band was on. They had just started their opening song. The killer walks across the stage, gun drawn.
We revive the forgotten tradition of telling ghost stories for Christmas.
There's this miserable, sour old man who spends all the time on his own in the graveyard, and the goblins take him.
And we sink our teeth into Nosferatu lore.
This story cropped up that the actor who played Nosferatu was so convincing that he was an actual vampire.
The Empty Coffin Podcast is part of the Evergreen Network. Subscribe on your favorite app and have yourself a scary little Christmas.
If you're thinking the name Bumpy Johnson, that sounds familiar. It might be because Bumpy Johnson has been the subject of character on a number of Hollywood films, including The Cotton Club, Hoodlum, which we just mentioned, and most recently, American Gangster, where Madame St. Clair's, where's her movie? But in American Gangster, he played the guy who Denzel Washington at the beginning of the movie was working for and eventually took over. But anyway, Madame St. Clair needs a movie. I need to see it now. HBO said, HBO's got the project. They just haven't put it out. So what are you waiting for?
They reported in 2020 that they had one in the works and then crickets.
Yeah, what's the deal, y'all?
Don't know. In 1930, St. Clair was said to have amassed $500,000, or about $8 million today.
Okay. Well, this is not an informal anything. This is serious capital.
Is serious business, yeah.
Yeah.
Her annual income was $200,000, and she lived in an apartment building that housed prominent members of the community, including NAACP activist Walter White, playwright Catherine Butler Jones, writer and activist W.E.B. Du Bois, and future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall on an elevator ride down
with all those people.
With all of, oh my God, can you imagine? Oh my God.
Think of Only Murders in the Building. They're always running in.
Yes, but this is real life, like historical, like heroes, juggernauts, right? So initially, St. Clair had little competition except for Casper Holstein, a Black man who had developed his own lottery called Bolito, and by 1920 he became known in the New York underworld as the Bolito King.
By the end of the 1920s, Holstein controlled a massive numbers-running operation, as well as nightclubs and several other legitimate business enterprises. His income was rumored to be as high as $12,000 a day at his peak.
Wow.
Yeah.
After Prohibition ended in 1932, II and during the Great Depression, white New York mobsters saw their profits rapidly diminish. Prior to this, they considered the numbers racket to be small potatoes. But when they saw the profits being made by non-white folks, they decided they wanted and needed a cut.
Dixie Davis, a white attorney who often represented black people in the numbers game, decided he wanted to take control of it, and he brought in Dutch Schultz. A Bronx native, Schultz was a notorious bootlegger with more than 100 underlings who enforced his rackets.
New York State's special prosecutor, Thomas, isn't that what Preet's title was? I don't know.
Not special prosecutor, no.
Okay. Sorry.
I forget what it is. Something prosecutor, but not special.
Oh, it's not tattooed on your belly?
Not yet, but that's a good idea.
Okay, next.
Maybe right
next
across
year.
right across my belly.
I can hear the wheels turning in your brain. Now, New York State, you have the FBI base pillow, and then you have Preet name tattooed across your
on my
chest.
belly.
Yeah. So, New York. Beth loves justice, guys, and true crime. So, New York State Special Prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey viewed Schultz as public enemy number one, later writing in his autobiography that he, quote, regarded it as a matter of primary importance to get Dutch Schultz, unquote.
The Schultz gang then began a takeover of the Harlem numbers racket. Black numbers runners were not career criminals, and violence had not been a part of their trade. Additionally, Dixie Davis represented many of Harlem's black policy operators and had a strong influence over them. Dutch Schultz brought in the guns and the muscle and the political influence, which black people did not have.
Davis advised his clients that Schultz and his gang were too powerful to fight with. One by one, including Casper Holstein, they folded. But Stephanie St. Clair was a different story. She balked at Schultz's overtures, went straight to the Harlem newspapers, and took out an ad to reveal how Schultz was trying to steal her business.
I love how she just goes straight to the newspaper.
You know what? Well, and she could have gone down too, and I think did at one point, right, for this, but fuck it. Balls to the wall, bitches. Cocks out, wangs out, suns out, guns out, buns out, all of it.
Everything out.
Everything out.
The Schultz gang then engaged in a bloody war with St. Clair and her allies for control of her numbers business. St. Clair didn't mince words in her declaration of war on Schultz. Quote, I'm not afraid of Dutch Schultz or any other living man. He'll never touch me. I will kill Schultz if he sets foot in Harlem. He is a rat.
Ooh.
The policy game is my game, unquote.
Whoa.
You tell him, girl. You tell him.
Okay. Shots fired. Now, St. Clair moved swiftly against Schultz, organizing the remaining black policy owners in her fight against the Dutchman. She and her allies violently confronted white store owners who were collecting bets on Schultz's behalf, smashing cases, destroying policy bets, and ordering their adversaries out of Harlem. Get out of here. Get the fuck out of here. GTFOH, I think, is the acronym. St. Clair also took out ads encouraging the people of Harlem to play black and only place numbers bets with black organizers, and I think also put their money in black banks.
Right. Schultz quickly retaliated. He started calling St. Clair's home to threaten her. He kidnapped and murdered her men. He even placed a contract on her life, forcing St. Clair at one point to hide in a cellar covered in coal.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Another time, Schultz sent an underling to intimidate St. Clair, but she gained the upper hand, pushed the man into a closet, locking him in and proceeding to tell her bodyguards to, quote, take care of him, unquote.
Oh, I love it. More, please. So over 40 people were killed in gangland-related violence, including the murders of Harlem numbers operators. Despite this, St. Clair and Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson initially refused to surrender to Schultz. Over time, however, their power weakened.
St. Clair made several futile complaints to local authorities about harassment from the New York Police Department, which she felt aided Schultz, and it probably did.
Mm-hmm.
Without political influence at City Hall, her concerns were ignored.
However, in response, I got another something for you. St. Clair took out several ads in Harlem newspapers accusing senior police officers of various forms of corruption. She named them. This is their name. This is their phone number. Their kids go to this school, and their address is this. And outraged by this, the police arrested her on several exaggerated, trumped-up-ass charges. In response, she testified to New York State's Seabury Crime Commission about the large number of kickbacks she had paid these police motherfucker dirty hoes officials to protect her operations. Her charges led to the dismissal of several police officers.
Good.
Winning!
Yeah. But as St. Clair realized she could no longer oppose Schultz, she agreed to a truce, which transferred the power and profits from her organization to Schultz and the Italian mafia headed by Lucky Luciano.
But no weapon formed against me shall prosper, because in 1935, Dutch Schultz was assassinated on the orders of Luciano. Although St. Clair was not involved in his murder, she was remembered for sending an infamous telegram to his bedside where he lay dying, which said, quote, "As ye sow, so shall ye reap," unquote. The telegram reportedly made headlines across the nation. Yeah, he messed with the wrong one and he fucked up and found out. Now, St. Clair's former Lieutenant Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson then became the mafia's representative in Harlem while she moved on to other things.
St. Clair's notoriety continued to grow even after her war with Schultz came to an end. In 1936, her non-legal marriage by contract to Bishop Amiru al-Mu'minin Sufi Abdul Hamid, an eccentric, controversial anti-Semitic race activist popularly dubbed Black Hitler, dominated headlines of black newspapers across the country.
I wonder if a rapper who shall not be named has heard of this individual.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the by contract marriage thing, I guess, is like a weird prenup. So she, after like 90 years or some shit, then they can split the assets. But before
After
that time,
90 years?
Wow. Before that, I guess it's each individual. It's something like that. There's like a timeline on when the assets can be split or divvied up after the marriage. So anyway, culture corner alert. The discussion of Black people and Jewish people is an old one. Both groups have been the subject of hate and terrible violence all over the world since the beginning of time. Sometimes oppressed groups are pitted against each other to their detriment and to the triumph of the nefarious oppressor. And there are Black Jewish people, which I wanted to say because I think that's important to note. There are Black Jewish people. So whatever anti-Semitism is coming from a Black person, that should be understood. There's also Black Jewish people in Africa, lots of them. But anyway, oppressed people do best when we work together. That's the bottom line. And 2 years ago, we should remember, because this is election night, a Jewish man and a Black man made it to the Senate on the same day. It was January 6th, but on the same day in the South. So progress like that is what I try to think of when, we are faced with this anti-Black or anti-Semitism. This fuckery. Yeah.
In their contract, the 40-something-year-old St. Clair and the 30-year-old Hamid agreed to a 1-year trial period. Okay, so this is making more sense to me now. She's 40-something. He's 30.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now this is making sense. All right.
Oh, okay. The contract part. Okay, got it.
Or the pairing of them together.
Oh, right. Okay,
What is she doing with this dude? Oh, he's 30. Gotcha.
Okay.
If the pair decided not to continue their relationship at that point, they could terminate the contract. If, on the other hand, they remained certain of their feelings for each other, they would hold a legal ceremony.
I like this. I know it's not a common thing
It's
in the
not
States.
traditional.
It's
yeah,
definitely
but
not.
I
But
don't
like,
see anything wrong with it.
yeah, if I'm expected to marry somebody,
Yeah.
let me just test it out, please.
Let's test it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why not? So Hamid claimed to have been born in the shadows of the Egyptian pyramids and a descendant of Egyptian pharaohs. In fact, he was likely born Eugene Brown in Lowell, Massachusetts. There are no pyramids in Massachusetts.
No, Eugene is not very exotic.
Nope. Eugene. Eugene. So a labor activist, he advocated for Black separatism while, quote, wearing a turban wrapped around his head, a black and crimson lined cape, a green velvet blouse, and black riding boots, unquote. Now, Uncle Eugene is what he's giving Uncle Eugene vibes. This is Uncle Eugene he got a big tax income check after April and went to the Rainbow and got some new duds. And this is the product right here. You know the Rainbow, right?
No, what's the
the Rainbow. The Rainbow, every hood has a rainbow, and it is a clothing store where you can get perfume, hoop earrings, school uniforms,
everything
and
you
the
need.
latest fast fashion.
Gotcha,
Yes.
gotcha.
But they don't
Okay.
sell snacks or have bathrooms. Anyway.
Oh, okay. According to historian Murray Friedman, who wrote a book called What Went Wrong? The Creation and Collapse of the Black-Jewish Alliance, Hamid, quote, courted the German-American Bund and the Nazi-like Christian Front, unquote, which is really weird.
That's dangerous.
Yeah. He organized violent boycotts of Jewish-owned establishments and advocated for businesses to instead hire Black employees.
Wow. And I will just say that this, as I said, everything works better when we all work together.
Yeah.
And the zero-sum game is what has us where we are now. This idea that if they gain, I get nothing.
Yeah. Then you lose. Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't work for anybody.
No.
So the couple's union soon imploded. Surprise! On January 19th, 1938, St. Clair fired 3 bullets at Hamid after learning of his affair with, quote, a conjure woman from Jamaica, unquote. According to Hamid, the closest she came to hitting him was nicking his teeth. No big deal. Convicted for his attempted murder, St. Clair was sentenced to 2 to 10 years at New York State Prison.
During sentencing, presiding judge James G. Wallace said, quote, this woman has been living by her wits all her life, unquote. As St. Clair was led out of the courtroom, she reportedly, quote, kissed her hand to freedom, unquote, which I'm not familiar with that expression.
I was going to ask you what it meant.
Okay, yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm imagining her kissing her hand and then throwing it up in the air.
Waving it like like she's on a float at the Macy's Day Parade.
Goodbye.
Yes.
That's what I'm imagining anyway.
Me too. But somebody tell us, what does it really mean?
Let us know.
If you've ever heard any person say that before, I am curious.
3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast that holds weekly gatherings around the campfire. Let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to hear stories about demonic possessions, prison stabbings, skinwalkers, glitches in the Matrix, cult leaders, missing 411, night marchers, Operation Paperclip, Mesopotamian devil worship, and so many monsters it'll give Kanye West a runaway for his money. Pop and meme culture also aren't off topic. A camp where laughs and scares are constantly competing for first place. We're just a group of friends, trying to bust each other's balls, find the best stories, and expand the circle in the process. 3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast not for the faint or fragile of heart. Let's go.
So now we're going to get into where are they now? Following her release from prison, the details of St. Clair's life became hazy. A 1943 article in the Black New York Amsterdam News says she visited relatives back in the West Indies before returning to live out her days in seclusion, likely in Harlem.
Historian LaShawn Harris traces St. Clair's last address to a Long Island psychiatric facility where in December 1969 she died at the age of 72 or possibly 82, depending on her true birthday. Her death wasn't widely publicized.
I thought that was interesting she lived so long, considering in general, Black people have the time, and Black people generally, and Black women generally have shorter life expectancies than other people. And so that's a long time to live for the time.
Yeah.
So according to Harris, in her later years, St. Clair made a conscious effort to stay out of the public eye. Quote, she probably didn't go out like she wanted, or maybe she did, but she didn't die with money. She had kind of a rags to riches story than riches to rags, unquote. And I don't know if that is, I will say sources I consulted, which were Black women sources who researched this woman, said that she did die wealthy. So
okay, and it would make sense if she died at the age of 72 if she had money, because that's
how else would she have lived, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Harris questions whether St. Clair was really all that different from other industrial titans of the era. Quote, St. Clair should be included in histories of Black business and Black entrepreneurship, unquote. And I agree.
Couldn't agree more. I've been smiling reading this entire story and talking about it with you. So I'm curious, what are your takeaways, Beth?
Well, as one judge said, she lived by her wits.
Yes.
She came from nothing and managed to get on the same level as white mobsters, which was really impressive. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She was badass and took no shit. I love that about her. Yeah. I loved how she would publish stuff in the newspaper.
I know. Yeah. It was like pre-Twitter, like the Twitter of the time, right? Before Elon Musk ruined it.
I can't help but admire her,
Yeah. Yeah.
She took on Dutch Schultz when the men wouldn't.
Right.
And it's kind of sad how she faded out. But I'm hoping that she did have money and she was happy.
Yeah.
Also, I loved learning about the Harlem Renaissance because I really didn't know anything about it before we started this. Yeah,
it's a really fascinating, and I think maybe the last episode we recorded, we talked about the Roaring '20s.
We mentioned it. We mentioned the Harlem Renaissance, but we didn't get into it. Yeah,
right. But my point is that the Roaring '20s are not appealing, interesting, exciting, or even like looked at fondly by Black people. But when you mention Harlem Renaissance, which is a part, it's its own separate thing. Yeah. And that this is the part of that era that I love. And it endures to this day, which is really, really, really rad.
Very cool.
So she's my hero. I love this woman. Her style, her badassery, all of the forces were against her. There's that immigrant mentality that she's got. There's that, I don't know if you remember T-shirts from a couple of years back during the election where it was like, Black women, don't worry about it, I'll just do it. Or, that's the whole reason Joe Biden is in office. We don't love Joe Biden. Like, he's all right, but
he's better than the alternative.
He was the best option. So, there's this sort of, we have to do what's best for ourselves and the collective, right? And that's what she was all about. I love that. Because of her existence in the world as a woman, as a Black woman and an immigrant and poor initially, all those forces couldn't keep her down. And she just did the damn thing. And I love that. Love.
Yeah.
Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media.
This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
24 hours ago, I found out the person that I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months is a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
And that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
a true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.
On the morning of August 1st, 1966, shots ring out from the observation deck of the clock tower on the University of Texas campus. It marks the infamous beginning of the modern era of mass shootings in America.
You're listening to Stop the Killing podcast. Join us as we take you behind the crime scene tape to explain global mass shootings and mass attacks. I'm Sarah Ferris, but more importantly, this is Catherine Schweit, the former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
I spent 5 years as the FBI's top executive looking for answers to the mass shooting crisis. I've been at the shooting scenes, I've traced heroic acts of bravery, and I've sat silently and listened to the heart-wrenching stories from survivors.
Amongst this horror, there is hope. We all hold the key to stop the killing. You just need to know how to unlock the door. Download Stop the Killing and be part of the solution. Search Stop the Killing on Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects.